Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the Steamship Authority's April 16th meeting of 2019. Sitting up here on the authority is Mona Attorney from New Bedford, and Rob Rennie from Nantucket, and Catherine Wilson from Falmouth. Right here is Mark Hanover from the Vineyard, and I'm Robert Jones. I would like to inform everybody that Steve Beatty of All Media Production is making a video and audio recording of today's meeting in public session for Martha's Vineyard Community Television, also known as MVTV. Also, Sean Driscoll, the authority's communication director, is making an audio recording of today's meeting in public session. Is there anybody else making an audio recording of today's meeting in public session? If so, would you please identify yourself? Martha's Vineyard Times. Is that all? Okay, thank you. Moving right into the order of the day would be the approval of the minutes of February 19th and March 19th. Could I have a motion for approval?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question first? I need you to separate the two of them because I was at one meeting and not the other.
I'll do that.
Thank you.
The minutes of February 19th.
So moved.
Is there discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
I'll second that motion before we go.
I thought
I made the motion.
you made the motion. Motion's made and second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I have to abstain.
Abstention, one abstention. No nays.
February 19th.
The March 19th meeting, we have a motion.
So moved.
It's moved.
I'd like to make a correction.
Let's get a second.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion.
The correction on page 13, Ms. Tierney's vote is listed as 35%. I think it's just a typo.
Oh, I thought I got a motion.
Isn't that the great?
Since our meeting was here this month. No.
I will make that.
Okay, any further corrections?
Yes, she should also correct on page 15 as well.
Yeah, I think that was.
What is that?
I was trying for her.
Oh, right.
Vicky didn't know.
You got mine? It's not special.
Did you make that correction?
I haven't noted it, I'll make it.
Okay. Call for vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Unanimous. Moving forward, report council report. George.
Thank you. The Port Council met on April 3rd. We reviewed the business summary for February and the differences between the results and the budget. In response to a question that was raised at that point in time, we were informed that the summer advance reservations were roughly flat, but truck demand for the summer has been up in terms of the advanced reservations. We received an update on the Woods Hole project. The pile driving has been nearly completed. A couple of small problems, but they're being dealt with. The new transfer bridges have arrived in America and are expected soon. We discussed the terminal design and the public input received, as well as the discussions with the Falmouth Historical District. We were updated on implementing the HMS recommendations, and we were told that we've completed the search for several new positions, and that's obviously been followed up with the presence of some people here today. We received unaudited results for the year 2018, and it appears that there will be a small loss for the year, the first one since 1996. We reviewed the 2020 winter and spring operating schedule and recommended approval. Thank you. Any questions?
No questions? Thank you, George. General Manager's report. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to begin first with the results of operations for February. So the total number of passengers carried on both routes for February was down 0.2%, just over 200 passengers. The Vineyard route was down 0.1%, while the Nantucket route was down 0.7%. The total number of automobiles carried on both routes for February was up 1.5%, with the Vineyard route being up 1.2%, and that was primarily with the standard automobiles, and the Nantucket route being up 3.7%, which is, again, this one is primarily the excursion automobiles. We should point out that here in February that a small change one way or the other is a relatively big percentage increase. That 3.7% increase in the automobile traffic from Nantucket is a total of 86 cars. The number of trucks carried on both routes for February was up 0.3% to 39 units. The Vineyard route was up 2.1%, and that was primarily the less than 20-foot vehicles, while the Nantucket route was down 4.1%, and that was primarily the larger, the over 20-foot vehicles. The overall number of cars parked on both routes for February was down 3.6%. The Vineyard route was down 4.2%, or 150 cars. The Nantucket route was up 2.5%, or 9 cars. Moving on to page 3 and 4, the net operating loss for the month of February was $4,573,000, was some $581,000 higher than what the amount was projected in the 2019 operating budget. Operating revenues and other income was $4,009,000, which was $111,000 lower than budget. Our automobile revenue was down $100,000. Freight revenue was down $62,000. Passenger revenue was $16,000 higher than budget. Parking revenue was down $9,000, while miscellaneous income was up $19,000. Total operating expenses and other expenses was $8,582,000, or $470,000 higher than budget. Maintenance expense was up $275,000, or 13.2% overall. As repairs to the Mountain Vineyard were down $74,000. Overhaul for the MV Woods Hole was up $66,000. Dry dock expense was up $415,000, and engine parts $142,000 for the Woods Hole. Most of that is a timing issue. Dry dock expense for the MV Eagle was up $77,000 as we got the final change orders in for that. Engine parts for the MV Island Home were down $397,000, and that's not a timing. That's the budget estimate actually was off on that one, so that's not going to be anything that we're going to be seeing going forward. And repairs to building and structures was down $69,000. Vessel fuel expense was $51,000 below budget, as the actual cost, including the hedge premiums, came in at $2.19 per gallon, while we had budgeted $2.60 per gallon. Our administration expenses were up $141,000, as our pensions expense was up $43,000, health was up $53,000, our disability contributions were down $31,000, and we had some supplies and equipment expense being up $16,000, while our training expense was up $29,000. During February, the vessels made a combined 1,284 trips, and this represents an increase of 10 trips, from 0.8% versus what was budgeted for the month. On the Vineyard route, 0 trips were canceled for mechanical, 14 for weather, 8 for traffic demands, while 4 additional trips were added. On the Nantucket route, 0 trips were canceled for mechanical, 14 for weather, 2 for traffic demands, while 44 additional trips were added. You may recall on the Nantucket route, the motor vessel GA had its triple cruise. It's in the system for 2 trips a day. It's available to run a 3rd trip if needed, and we found that more often than not, we did need that. Moving on to pages 6 and 7, the net operating loss from the year-to-date through February was $9,884,000, or some $661,000 higher than the amount anticipated. Operating revenues and other income for the year are down $49,000, while operating expenses and fixed charges are $611,000 higher than anticipated. Our vessel fuel oil expense was $127,000 below budget, as the actual cost thus far has come in at $2.14 a gallon, and we budgeted $2.62 a gallon. So in addition to our maintenance expenses, year-to-date are up $88,000. Our administration expenses are up $244,000. As pension accounts for $111,000 of that. Health is down $47,000. Disability contributions are down $42,000. Unemployment is down $32,000, but our training expense is up by $40,000. So, on page 9 and 10 of the business summary, you'll see that our fund balances are relatively good shape. We'll see that next month that will be the recollects that were done from the operations fund to fund some of these projects was made. So those balances will come up. But I think overall they're in decent shape at this point. So with that, any questions?
Any questions for Paul?
Jones?
Yes.
Directing your attention to page 6, the middle column, where you compare the actual 2019 year-to-date operating income to the 2018 actual operating income. We're down almost $2.6 million, correct? If we compare where we were a year ago in February to where we are now.
Yep.
We had a loss in 2018, correct?
Correct.
This is a significant concern to me. And we're down $2.6 million when we compare February to February in a year in which we had a loss. And it seems to me that the bulk of that is in the increase in direct vessel maintenance, and then there's another $500,000 in other. I don't know what other is, but I'll leave that for a second. And then you're asking us today to approve change orders to the Cashman contract of about $500,000. So I'm concerned with the trend that we have going right now, especially given the level of expenditures that we are committed to incur. And I want to know what the plan is.
So when you're doing the comparison of year over year, particularly with the maintenance expense, there's some changes. So for instance, this year we had 2 vessels that were in dry dock during this time period. A year ago, while the Martha's Vineyard was out in repair, that was a capital expense. So that explains why, the $1.7 million, part of that is the engine overhauls that we were performing on the INO and as well as on the Island Home. Some of it's the dry dock, the schedule that has. So it's not necessarily apples to apples comparison there, and that's why while we have it there, how we're doing against the budget is a little bit more telling. So we are up by $650,000 in the budget. Some of that's the wages that we've had. I think overall the maintenance expense for the vessels is about $76,000 off where we had anticipated. We do have some terminal expenses that are down. In terms of the one thing that you still have to look at is the pension, how we, the pension and the health. And we need to go back and look at how that was calculated to make sure that we don't have an issue going forward there. Maybe just a timing issue is when we do the health claims, is we look at a historical factor in terms of how the health claims come through for the plan. And I just need to take a look at that to get a little bit more reassurance, and I apologize I haven't had a chance to do that. So,
What is the $500,000 increase in other from 2 years?
So part of it is training expense that we include in there. There's also other falls. We call it, I think it's most of the administration expenses. We have credit card increase. And some of this may be also a timing issue on some of that. I think overall, we've been taking a more aggressive approach in terms of getting training done here in the off season. So I think that's going to be that's what $50,000. A tenth of that is an increase in the training costs. So,
Any other questions?
On the hedging, it's certainly working well for us. And did I read that we have not done any hedging for 2020?
Yeah, so I talked a couple times with our consultants from Hedge Solutions on it. We were preparing to start getting our position established for 2020, and it was too late in the day to do it on one day, and by mid-morning, the next morning, the market was on an uptick, so we decided that we have some luxury here of being able to hold off for a little bit. We probably will start to at least phase in some of those hedges for the first quarter of next year, but I think overall the plan, as we've had in the past, would be by the time we're finalizing the budget that we have all the following year's hedges in place.
Thank you.
We don't want to be chasing the market, but the consultant had indicated that we thought that this uptick may reverse itself. So.
He knows better than I hope.
Any other questions? Next.
Okay. So, next item we have is an update on the Woods Hole Terminal reconstruction project. Just give you a quick update here. So during the past month, J. Cashman Inc. completed driving the piles of the transfer bridge at slip number 3. With all the piles in place for slip number 3, Cashman was able to cut the transfer bridge piles to the design elevation and completed filling the 16 and 18-inch piles with concrete. The concrete subcontractor meanwhile mobilized and built the concrete forms for the bridge foundation, and the rebar subcontractor installed the rebar for the foundation. And Cashman continued to work on the monopiles, including welding fender standoffs and pad eyes, and setting the rebar for the concrete top. Cashman also welded the support bracing for the utility platform at that slip. They also constructed the utility platform. Cashman also set temporary piles for a temporary trussel to be used in the passenger platform construction. So their idea is that they're going to be actually, they created a trussel that they'll bring equipment out onto in order to facilitate driving the piles for the pier. And the concrete contractor started work on the bulkhead concrete cap, as well as the electrical contractor is mobilizing to install electrical and telecommunication utilities. So, and I should point out that the transfer bridges have arrived at this point. So. Lawrence Lynch, meanwhile, mobilized and started to install the stormwater structures in the bulkhead. They completed the 48-inch stormwater drain and continue to work on the 24-inch stormwater drain. And then for the Perry sewage pump-out system project piece of this, Robert B. Auer installed the precast concrete chambers for the vacuum tanks, as well as the concrete sewage holding tanks up in the employee parking lot area. As part of the sewer pump-out project, Robert B. Auer evacuated in the front of the concrete chambers for the suction and discharging piping. They also began testing the sewage pump-out system in Vineyard Haven so that it can become operational, which will allow us to start to do the relocation of the equipment in Woods Hole. They also completed the installation of another concrete vault for the forced sewer main pumps and then to install a valve vault at the town's forced main pipe. Thus far, we've sent 5 community emails on what's going on with the project, and I think we have some pictures here. About 50.
Yeah.
Is there an exception?
We can't afford another one this close.
It'd be lovely. All right, this is a view of the site, an aerial view of the site and the congestion. You can see the stormwater structures.
The pointer's not working on
The
it.
pointer
Doesn't work on the
It won't
TV.
work on the TV that well. so.
Okay, those concrete structures, 48-inch gate valves, oil separator, and there's a catch basin with some 24-inch lines are going to go into it. But the point of this picture, it shows the congestion that's going on that small site. There's not very much space to work and lay down the equipment, so we're moving stuff in and out. You can see the monopiles. You can actually see the formwork for the land side foundations for the transfer bridge at this point. We'll move to the next picture. Better view of the transfer bridge. Some of the piles the piles on the right-hand side are 16-inch piles. Those are going to be used in the passenger platform. This is a view of the utility platform. So the sewer, shore power, water, sewer, shore power, water, and fuel oil will be mounted on that deck. There's going to be a deck on the top of those piles. Just another view of the farms. This is actually completed. It was completed last week. So if you came through this morning, you would probably see, the concrete. It should be bare, or they're probably be pulling it today, actually. This is just another dead man. So where the 48-inch stormwater line goes through the bulkhead, we had to raise the whaler above that to support that structure. So that's what that picture is. More farms. It's good to see concrete. After January and February, it was great to see concrete and things are moving. Rebar. More rebar. This is the cage that goes in the top of the monopiles. They just set that in. They're going to do it in 2 pours. This is a 24-inch stormwater drain that goes out the north side of the bulkhead. So we're actually, this season, we're picking up all the water from Locust and Railroad Avenue. So we're picking up all this north side of the terminal and the streets. more structures. There's a large gate valve that goes into that structure to be able to shut off the stormwater in case we have a spill on site. Another view of the structures.
On those stormwater drains, do you have filters and catch basins to trap, any
So,
hazardous stuff and whatever?
yeah, so that, the middle one right there is like an oil water separator. Stuff that stays in the bottom. It'll separate the stuff. And on the outside, because the drain's so low, there's it's like a non-return valve. So the water can only flow out in the tide. It's below the tide. So this valve actually is it's like a duct valve. It works on back pressure. When the stormwater pressure gets high enough, it'll actually open.
You can check that.
Yeah, kind of. More views. Monopiles, you can see the standoffs. I'm sorry, I can't point, but you can see the standoffs and the staging they use to weld those on. Those are almost complete. Another view of the welder working. Yes, the fender, there's a fender frame, there's a bumper, and then the fender frame connects to the bumper. This is Robert Auer. This is a view of the employee lot. Some of the two vacuum chambers are in there. Now you got all three vacuum chambers. There are sewer holding tank, and the one in the bottom left is for the force main pump to the town's force main. We're just about ready to start moving equipment. They'll be testing, as Bob says, like testing this week on the vineyard, so we should be able to start moving equipment in a week or so. Another view. I think that's it. Any questions? Yes. I'm driving on
Raise your right hand.
I promise. We're gonna do what we have to do. Mark.
I think one thing Bill said, it was Locust Street, it's actually Luscombe Ave.
Luscombe.
And Railroad that he was referring to.
I'm sorry.
So that's it regarding the marine portion of it, and then just a quick update on the terminal design. So on Thursday, March 28th, the steamship staff and its architects presented to the Falmouth community the schematic design alternatives for the Woods Hole Terminal building. We received a number of comments from the public about the building's proposed design and location. Staff and the architects then provided the Falmouth Historical Commission an update on the schematic design alternatives on Tuesday, April 2nd. And then on Monday, April 8th, the staff and the architect again presented the schematic design alternatives of the Woods Hole Terminal building to the vineyard community. So comments on the alternatives were requested to be submitted by April 12th, and we're now in the process of sorting those out and coming up, addressing where we can the concerns that were raised. So at this point, we don't anticipate the future meeting will probably be coming back with the proposals.
So,
Can I
what's
make,
the?
is this a right time to make a comment or ask a question? We talked a couple of weeks ago about the site of the project, and considering it's such an expensive, how much is the building expected to cost?
I think the estimate that the architects have is $13 million, but I believe that also includes the utility building as well.
Okay. So one of the questions we had was, that we talked about was We're placing it as close as we can to the water, right on the edge of a major velocity zone, and spending a lot of money to do it. And I forget whether it was Steve or Bill, we talked about contacting the Woods Hole Group. The Woods Hole Group is an engineering firm who has been doing a review for the State Department of Transportation, evaluating all of their critical infrastructure. And they're now doing it for Falmouth as well. And so all the data is there, and they're making projections 25 years and 50 years in terms of sea level, weather, and all that type of stuff. So considering we're making this major project, and I realize that it's got to be very frustrating for all of you who've been doing this for a while, and I'm new to the table here. But I think it would make sense to get a site-specific review for this exact project to make sure that we're spending our money in the right way. Setting aside aesthetics, setting aside views of the water and all that kind of stuff. As a business expense, I'd like to be more confident that this project makes sense. I was contacted a couple of days ago by an engineer in Falmouth who did some work for MBL and Hui. I had not contacted him, he contacted me out of the blue, and he said, I'm really concerned about the height of everything. So what they have done at Hui and MBL apparently is bumped everything up by at least a foot. I can share the information that he shared with me, but did we ever reach out to Woods Hole Group, do you know?
We haven't yet, Catherine. We have our structural engineers in-house that are working on the project, do that similar work. And we have done some work doing a feasibility study on designing the building, the whole site for 50 years, including the waterfront structures. We have to go back and figure out what we actually did in the original design to project for a 50-year lifespan and see water level rise. You know about the building and the extra 2 feet, but
Right.
the bulkhead is designed for changes. I'm just not sure what. I need to go back and do a little bit of homework.
Well, I'd like to make a request that we have some, Woods Hole Group has, great credentials. They're doing the work for the state and for the town. The data's there. If we could just contact them to find out what it would cost for a very specifically defined, site-specific evaluation. Another set of eyes on this couldn't hurt, given that the scope of the project we're talking about.
Yeah, so we had talked about that and moving forward, I guess we haven't gotten around to it, but the plan was to be contacting them to see what data they have available and what sort of timetable they would be able to turn it around.
And it may be that they will completely support everything we have underway, and that would just raise my confidence. Thanks.
So we will be going back and put a request into the Woods Hole Group for their expertise.
Yeah, I thought we were taking care of that last week, but we'll.
Excuse me?
I thought we were taking care of that last week, but we'll be taking care of it this week.
No problems here. Moving forward.
So next one is status of the implementation of the HMS recommendations. So just a quick update. The past couple of weeks, staff has been vetting candidates for the Director of Marine Operations, Port Captain, and HSQE Manager positions, which were all, 2 of which are new positions that HMS had recommended in their recommendations. And at this stage, I'm pleased to announce that each of these positions have been filled. For the Health, Safety, Quality, Environmental Manager position, we have selected Angela Sampson. Ms. Sampson has spent more than a decade in the environmental health and safety field, both at sea and is an environmental officer with Celebrity Cruises, and shoreside with Hasbro, where she most recently worked as an environmental health and safety engineer. Ms. Sampson's expertise lies in developing and implementing environmental health, safety, and sustainability programs to ensure compliance with environmental laws and industrial standards. At Hasbro, she supported global and corporate sustainability initiatives and served as the hazardous waste coordinator, a position that resulted in cost and waste reduction measures. She is a graduate of Mass Maritime Academy, where she received a bachelor's degree in marine safety and environmental protection. She also received a master's degree in environmental sustainability from the University of Edinburgh. Angela is with us today, and so next we have the port captain.
I gotta say, welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. I didn't want to pass over that. Now you can go.
Okay, for the port captain position, we selected Captain Jordan Baptiste. Captain Baptiste was born and raised as a fifth-generation Islander, hailing from Baden Haven. He is a 2000 graduate of Martha's Vineyard Regional High School and a U.S. Coast Guard veteran, serving from 2002 through 2009. He has more than 15 years of professional maritime experience, including both shoreside and afloat management level positions, and holds a Master of Unlimited Tonnage upon Oceans, a license. For the past 6 years, Jordan has served as captain of a multi-purpose support vessel in the offshore oil and gas industry, operating in one of the most heavily regulated sector of the marine industry. It has given Jordan extensive knowledge and experience in the application of process-based management, including International Safety Management Code, safety management systems, learning management systems, and quality management systems. He has a bachelor's degree in transportation and logistics management from American Public University, where he is currently enrolled in graduate school, completing his master's degree in management and organizational leadership. So both Angela and Jordan began their tenure with the authority starting this morning. So Captain Baptiste is here.
Again, welcome aboard. I'm just wondering how are these people so young? I always feel positions like that, they gotta be older than I am. Congratulations and welcome aboard.
Thank you, sir.
With regards to the Director of Marine Operations position, Mark Amundsen has been chosen to fill this new position. Mr. Amundsen brings more than 30 years of experience in operations, strategic planning, technical management, and engineering in the international shipping industry to his role at the Steamship Authority as its first ever Director of Marine Operations. His expertise includes strategic transportation business development, oversight of safety compliance, structuring and negotiating long-term contracts, cost control and purchasing elements, as well as presiding over dry dockings all over the world. He was most recently operations manager for Singapore Technologies Marine, which operated ferry services in Europe. Previously, he was managing director for Novastar Cruise Limited, a ferry service which operated from the U.S. to Canada, as well as director of ship repair at Irving Shipyard Building in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He received his bachelor's degree in marine engineering from Maine Maritime Academy and is a licensed chief engineer for steam and motor vessels. And Mark will begin his employment on May 6th. In addition to these positions, I'd also like to announce that the position of Director of Human Resources has been filled by Ms. Janice Kenfick. Ms. Kenfick has more than 20 years of experience in the human resource field, most recently as the HR Director for Tribe Mediterranean Foods in Taunton. She has served as Human Resource Manager of Ocean Spray Cranberries in Lakeville, where she also was a Senior Human Resource Generalist, and also worked in similar roles at CompuShare. She has led talent review and talent calibration sessions, implemented business unit succession planning and talent management plans, created employee training and organizational development programs. She studied business management at Lesley University, and Janice will be beginning her employment on April 29th. So please join me in welcoming these individuals as they begin their steamship employment.
Thank you. Work is cut out for you, pulling this together here.
Yep. Currently, we have, regarding the HMS, we still have the request for proposal out on the street for the safety management system and quality management system. The RFP is scheduled to be open in early May, as we want to have these maritime positions filled, because we want them to be part of the evaluation process. We also have entered into a contract with Marine Learning Systems for a learning management program. They're already working on customizing that program for our needs, and we anticipate that later this month and the beginning of next month that we'll actually have that program in-house. Okay. Next item we have is the preliminary version of the proposed 2020 winter and spring operating schedules. This is a draft for information only. We'll be coming back at a later time for approval. So the draft that you see is very similar to the 2019 operating schedule. In this case, we're starting on January 4th, which is one day later than this year's schedule, but ending on May 14th, which is the same as this year, and that's because we have a leap year, so the 3-day cycles works. The schedule from January 4th through January 9th next year is identical to the schedule that we had for this year in terms of the number of trips, the vessels that would be running those trips. From January 10th through February 23rd, similar schedule as well to what we have. It's not until the February 24th through March 15th schedule for the winter where there is a difference. Instead of the Island Home running during that period, as it did this year, the Woods Hole would be running in its place as the Island Home is scheduled for dry dock next year. Moving on to the early spring, late winter, early spring schedule. Similar schedule in terms of what we have for 2019, with the exception being is that from March 16th to March 30th, the Woods Hole would be running in place of the Island Home. And following that, from March 31st to April 2nd, it would be a similar schedule to what we operated this year. And then once we get to the spring schedule, which is April 3rd to March 14th, again, the schedule is the same as what we have for this year. So we're proposing basically the same schedule, with the exception that substituting for the vessels that need to be put into a repair or dry dock status. We presented a copy of this to the Port Council at their meeting earlier. We're going to the advertisements for the schedules have been placed in the regional newspapers for public comment. Point out that during this time period, this is the time where we do not have any 530 trips originating from Woods Hole, just as we did this past winter in the spring. So, we're not seeking any vote at this point. This is for information purposes, and we'll be coming back at a later time. The one thing I should point out that is that we are looking at some of the times on a couple of these trips. So for instance, trip number 7 on these schedules is the 7 a.m. from Woods Hole with a scheduled arrival of 7:45 arrival. It's a 15-minute turnaround, so we're going back and looking at the actual arrival times of that vessel, and we may be proposing that we keep the schedule of the leaving at 7 o'clock, but we'll be working whether we should be listing that as a 7:50 arrival time, so that we then coordinate that with the Vineyard Transit Authority, so that way we can better reflect the anticipated arrival of that vessel. It's tough that early morning trip to do a 15-minute turnaround, so, but they can make it up on some of the sailing, so I think it's more important that the arrival time as opposed to the departure time. The other piece of this is that we're looking at is how the school vacation falls, you know, here in March, as well, and also trying to get a better handle as to the construction that will be taking place in Woods Hole during this time period. So we may be looking at berthing the freight boat on island a couple weeks earlier than we have right now. So, but you know, once we work that out, we'll be coming back with a proposal.
Any questions on that, Mark?
Isn't the 7 a.m. coming in, leaving the vineyard also a very tight turnaround?
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be as problematic as the Woods Hole side of it. Primarily, the 7 o'clock is the island home, so to drive out, you know, it's easy to load than the offload and load than the mountain. It doesn't have as many lanes.
Pockets.
Yeah.
All right. And how long is the island home going to be out?
It's going to be up from 2:24 to 3:30.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
This is not necessarily the proper time for this comment here, but when we're doing these schedules and we know the vessels are going to be out, am I correct? Our policy is we're trying to do the inspections every 2 years rather than twice every 5 years. Am I correct on that?
Yes, so for the dry docking for the bigger vessels, the requirement is twice in a 5-year period, no longer than a 3-year period. But our practice has been now for the past 10, 12 years is to be doing them on a 2-year cycle. So over a 10-year period, they end up with an extra dry dock. The idea being is that we need to be able to preserve these vessels and make sure that they're items being attended to that need to be attended to. So.
Yeah, and I agree with that, except for one thing, that sometimes it's taken, several big boats offline, and if you ever need them again, and they're ready for repair, I wonder, the feasibility or advisability of taking that 5-year period and spacing them between, so it's twice in 5 years, that we have maybe not an gap or overlap between big vessels that have the potential if something goes offline, like we experienced last year.
So we generally don't have 2 of the bigger vessels out at a dry dock at the same time. There may be an overlap in some of the repair periods. And now the Woods Hole being capable of operating as one of the larger boats during some of this time period that frees up some of the time as well. It's not ideal, particularly on the Vineyard Run, because of we don't have any side loading of passengers, so it interferes with the vehicle loading as well. So,
Just a thought for the future.